Hey guys, welcome to this two-part series where I show you how to build this round coffee table. The first video is going to cover how you create a round tabletop. Then the second video will show you the different ways you can create coffee table legs to match whatever style you're going for. Alright, let's hop on it. First step is picking up your lumber. You always want to give it a couple days to acclimate to your shop, but here it rained on me, so I give it about a week and a half to 2 weeks before I use this lumber. We'll move right into jointing the board. With the joiner, you'll want to flatten one face with it, and then use that flat face pushed up against the fence to give you a perfect 90 on flattening one edge. Also, I cut these boards down to about 40 inches because the table will be about 36 inches. Take those boards to the planer and almost drop it for style points. When using a planer, make sure you put the jointed face downward because the blades on this will be on the top. You'll take off about 1/16 of an inch on every pass. Run the board through and examine after each pass to see whenever the blades are cutting along the full length of the board. Do that for all your boards and then lower the planer again and run them all through one more time just to ensure they're all the same thickness. I will then use a caliper just to check all the thicknesses of the board, just to make sure they are as close as possible and I didn't miss any. Quick intermission for a family walk, and then I'll be right back. I'm back. Now we're just bringing the planer in, and I'll wheel the wood back in because we have one last edge to get straight, so we'll do that on the table saw. Step 1 of using a table saw is to make sure it's plugged in. Now, thinking, should I use my micro jig? Maybe the push stick? Pull up the pants and we'll just use our hands. Before you cut the board, make sure you're cutting off the right edge. I've made that mistake before. Now you get to see my patented Robert De Niro table saw face. With a little YouTube magic, we will get all the edges of these boards cut off. A crucial part to finishing these boards is to take the table saw blade marks off with the jointer by just doing one more pass on the jointer for each of the boards. Using some of my leftover boards, I cut out 4 2-inch thick strips to be able to use when clamping this tabletop together. For this build, it's going to have a round top and a round bottom. So for the rest of this video, you kind of see a mixture of the two being built together. But right now, I'm just laying out the boards for each of them to find the best pattern I want to go with, but also to make sure I'm going to get the cleanest joint. A major thing you have to pay attention to is the end grain of the boards. You don't want them all running the same way, kind of known as the smiles and the frowns. You want them to be staggered within each other. This will keep the table from being able to warp one way or the other. Once I have the layout chosen for the glue up, I like to mark it with numbers because that'll tell me which way is the right side up, which edge is supposed to be on which side, and how they're all supposed to meet up. Move those out of the way so you can get your clamps ready. Try to clean all the glue off your clamps last time you used it, or else you'll run into a problem like I did, where it's really hard to push back. Lay your boards out following the order of the numbers to make sure you have the same pattern. I just wanted to check my measurements one more time. If I were to do this again, I would cut them all at 40 inches. I don't know why I decided to cut some at different sizes. After doing a quick test fit of my clamps, I realized I needed some blocks just to raise it up to allow the clamps to get underneath. For the full-length wood clamps we created, you'll want to use Scotch tape to protect them from the wood glue whenever we glue this up. If you don't, well, you'll end up with these glued to your workpiece. A great option to protect your workbench is to use wax paper to protect it from all the squeeze out during this glue up. Now for putting the glue on the edge, you just want to make sure that you don't have any bald spots, so put enough glue and spread it out to make sure it's going to be fully sealed together. Use a fancy brush like I'm using here to spread the glue along the whole edge. With the boards lined up, lightly snug up the first clamps so we can add the ones on the side and still be able to maneuver the boards. Tighten down these side clamps all the way, ensuring all the boards are level together. Then you can fully tighten the pipe clamps. After 24 hours, you can release the clamps, and then we can take it outside to go ahead and start cutting these circles. Now that we have a second, I just want to ask you guys to show support for the YouTube videos by liking and subscribing, and even leaving a comment if you guys like it or if you got some tips or tricks. Make sure to move those sawhorses as close together as you can. When you're cutting it out with the circle jig, you're likely to clip one if it's hanging out. Before setting up the circle jig, go ahead and scrape off all the excess glue the best way you can. One way I do it here is just to use my chisel, but my new and improved way is to use this electric hand plane. I set up my circle jig by swapping out the base plate for the circle jig. If you guys want to see how I made this circle jig, just leave it in the comments and I'll try to make a video for you guys. Go ahead and mark out the center of your circle. Here I'm just adjusting the jig I made by adding a sight line so I can easily line it. Hammer it in and start cutting it out. Before I start sanding it down, I go ahead and add the super glue to all the knots just to make sure we don't loosen any of them up and that over time they don't loosen up. Whether you use epoxy or super glue to fill the knots, it's easiest to use a belt sander to then bring that all down to level with the wood. I sanded this piece up to 180 grit, paying special attention to the sides because that'll really stand out in this piece after they're stained. Thank you guys for watching the video. Again, if you enjoyed it, drop a like and stay tuned for the next video where I show you how to make the custom legs.